Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to Heartbeat. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Heartbeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Thank you for joining us today. Hey, today I'm doing a show. I'm actually pre-recording the show today, and I'm sharing this with you because of something that a story that I want to tell that I saw last night. I'm titling the show today, we brought in back a guest that was with us about a year ago, Dr. Karen Johnson. She's the former Chief Equity Officer for Washington State. And you follow Heartbeat, or people who know me know that I will continue to advocate and fight for the Black woman. And one of the issues, if you follow the show, the way that Black women are constantly discarded, disregarded, and kind of thrown away a little bit, right? Like, I've used the phrase, the 2-year life cycle of a Black woman is fairly predictable from my 30 years of corporate experience of what happens to particularly Black women when we challenge the status quo and or when we hold people accountable. And so there's a very predictable process, playbook that is used to tear Black women apart. If you hear in my intro where I talk about the disproportionate termination, let's talk about what's gone on in the news this past week. And the reason why I mentioned that the show is pre-recorded is because it's Tuesday morning. Last night on the Rachel Maddow show, she was getting ready to have Fani Willis on because today is Tuesday as we're recording, and it's the district attorney in Fulton County's election today. And I listened to Rachel's intro comments, and I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what we're talking about on the show this week, which is who fights for the women, who fights for the woman who has the courage to stand up to try to help drive systemic changes. And the backlash that happens, secondarily, people will say, oh yeah, but she did blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, but she was like, da, 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 right? So if you're following Fani Willis, they're still coming at her really hard, and they're just looking for angles and different things to try to tear her down, right? They have come after her personal life. They have come after her financials. They're coming after just a myriad of things to discredit her, and they will stop at nothing, which is the playbook. Now, this playbook that is followed around Black women, I mean, did you catch? I know you did. It's all over the news. What was happening in legislative session with Congresswoman Crockett this week? Did you see what happened when she swung back at whatever her name is, Marjorie Taylor Greene? And the commentary that's come out about Representative Crockett. Now she has stooped to the same level, and she has, whatever, the narratives that get painted. And, there's this phrase about, you don't get to, swing hard and destroy us and then tell us how hard we punch back. And that's been kind of the model of, let's just kind of tear her apart. Let's find what's quote unquote wrong with her, and let's tear her apart. And then let's not even stop at the fact that we take her job from her, but then let's go into the community and let's attempt to destroy her even further by diminishing her name or doing things to try to sabotage her, right? And her can be a myriad of Black women that are facing this kind of wrath constantly. Now, let me be clear, this wrath doesn't always come from, this is not a black and white issue, pardon the pun here, right? Like it's an issue over envy, uh, people who have become accustomed to how to use a system that's in place, the investigation process. Are you following what's happening here in Washington State with the local news around one of our other representatives who, they activate that system, and that system is to trigger an investigation. Fani Willis, Letitia James, let's just, go after the people who are brought in, who are hired to make changes. And then because those changes are uncomfortable, then we want to tear her apart. And the question became, and it was really powerful last night when I heard Rachel Maddow talking, is she said, who's protecting Fani Willis? Like, who's defending her? And that really hit hard because I asked those same questions, which is why I had initially decided to bring Dr. Karen Johnson on and why we want to do a 1-year follow-up with her, because who's looking out for her? Who cared enough post all of this happening, whatever the circumstances are? She's still a person. She's a human. And she has clearly been successful in her career. She's educated. She's done a lot in the community. She cares about other people. Okay, maybe somebody didn't like she because she's a woman of faith. And so we use that system that's in place that says you can't bring religion into the workplace. Or we look at, did she spend her budget or whatever those issues were? I was listening to Fani Willis say the same things last night. How can it be that this many highly educated, highly successful women be told that they are no longer needed, their work is no longer necessary, and they get dismissed? And then does anybody care enough about her? I care. I care about what's happening to Black women. I have personally don't bite on comments and rhetoric and narratives that are said. Okay, well, okay. I mean, people say things about me too. I don't listen to them, and it doesn't define my character. And me personally, yeah, I've made some mistakes, but I deserve grace too. Can we as a community, can we as Black people, can we as women collectively address this behavior that's happening, that is tearing Black women or attempting to tear Black women apart? And who is there to look out for them? Let me welcome back to Heartbeat 1 year later. Let's welcome in Dr. Karen Johnson today to have this discussion with her. Dr. J. She has her
Hey, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
It's been a minute. I am well.
It's been a minute. Yeah. I hope you heard my comments that I made about, and I don't even know if you caught the show last night, but I thought it was very much in line with the discussion I wanted to have with you today, because I was concerned and asking the question, whose defends Dr. J? I think I want to just kind of start off and just ask you, post a year ago, what is your life like now? And what has changed for you over the course of the past year?
Why, thank you. Thank you so much, Cindy. I did catch the show and was just nodding my head, and life is great. For me, I'm at peace. I'm at peace. And it's because of straight up God. You mentioned my faith. We knew at the May 17th, Public resurrection follows public crucifixion. So we do. And God is faithful. And I'm so glad that you're really having this conversation because, I'm almost finished writing the book. I'm pretty excited about that. So I hope everybody reads it. But in this culture, starting with the making of a slave, it's still being played out now. We're dealing with lie, deny, delay. Those are the tactics. That
Mhm.
doesn't work, we deflect, and then we protect. And if that doesn't work, we gaslight, investigate, and terminate. And I'm so glad that you asked the question, what's it like for me? It was hard. That's what it was like. And without the love and the care and the rest and the crying and the rest, did I say the crying? Did I mention the love of people like you and others? I would not be at peace today. I've started my new journey. I'm in a different state. Red and blue makes purple. I'm in a different state of a new assignment, which, by the way, when they read all the materials of the last assignment, they considered that all assets that are necessary to move forward in the new. So God is faithful. Nothing is ever left to chance for him. But what I think is most important is we often talk about how strong Black women are. And I'm just really want to thank you for highlighting, yeah, we're strong, but we're also human. And quite truthfully, I don't know how anyone goes through being healed from trauma, because it is traumatizing when your whole character is impugned and you don't have an opportunity to say a word about it. And in my introductory meeting of the new staff this last week, I was looking for my for the record comments that I had submitted to that investigation that I had yet to read, and I didn't see them there. I didn't see my comments there indicating that I forfeited that March 24th meeting that was canceled. That's when I was supposed to meet with the investigator to find out what the allegations against me were. But somebody had canceled my meeting with the investigator because they said I was out sick. Well, actually, I was recovering from trauma, but I scheduled it for that day because during my wellness break, I wanted to be well. And so my for the record statement to the investigation is don't reschedule the meeting with me because I don't feel like I'm going to have due process. If you cancel a meeting that you set with me to tell me the specific allegations against me, it's canceled because somebody told you I'm sick, not me. But that's the kind of behavior and mentality that I felt could have given rise to the allegations against me. It's like made a decision about me without me. And yet we rise, and yet we're at peace, and yet God is still good, and we are still here lifting up our voice for others.
Let me play this little clip for you. I want to bring you back to this. And because as you were just describing, looking back and how meetings canceled and trauma informed, I think many times employers, and I'll speak, well, I can speak to it from both angles, from both being a human resources executive trying to help care for people. And I can also speak to it from someone who's been harmed by that internal system as well, of being used against me also. And what's never factored into due process is what this feels like as the person who is on the receiving end, and the fact that you
Ooh.
almost can't you almost let me say this a different way. I remember responding years ago to one of the police shootings, and somebody on social media had said, well, why didn't he just do da 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 da? And I remember commenting and I said, you need to put yourself in that person's shoes for that moment. Because when you are facing a gun looking down your face, the adrenaline, the stress, and the trauma, when it overtakes your body, you're almost outside of your physical body. You are in a whole nother dimension trying to cope with what's happening at that
Right.
time.
Right.
So let me play this because this clip reminds me of, I'm just going to say respectful workplace because I want to talk more about that. Let's just see if this one.
I was shocked and devastated when I learned at the counter of Best Buy, when I was buying my computer and monitors and all my little stuff I needed to start writing books and moving on to the next phase of ministry, that the reasons that you all are seeing in the press were the reasons for my release of duties. When I left the room, I was at peace, a little concerned that, how the messaging went, and felt that, well, everybody else who leaves at least gets a chance to write the "it's with bittersweet emotion" email. But to find out that there really were reasons that I knew nothing about. From a news reporter standing in line in Best Buy, it hurt. And I asked him, what on earth did you say to them for them to say that about me? Because, everybody knows when you serve the pleasure of the governor, child, you don't even need any reason.
That was painful when I re-looked back at the show to hear your emotion in there and to talk about how you were treated and the lack of regard for what I was describing before the clip, which is what place you must have been in mentally to be able to even hear those sorts of things said about you. Has that trauma healed from that time?
Had I not watched it, I would have said yes. But as you can see, I'm rocking. I'm breathing. And the trauma has healed. However, I feel tears welling in my eyes because I know at any given moment, once again, in this society, anyone can say anything about me and be believed. And the truth has no place in the discourse. And I can feel myself coming back together now because that was a traumatic experience. Because from Best Buy, I was on my way to the florist to buy the governor a plant, his chief of staff and deputy chief of staff flowers and candy, to thank them for the incredible opportunity and for them playing their roles perfectly. And I can only imagine the devastation that Fonnie Willis and other Black women are going through when we are treated as not even a piece of meat. Dogs, animals are treated better than we, because at least when they bark or indicate they want to go out, they're heard and they're taken up for a walk or to potty or whatever. But we find ourselves unemployed, devastated, some in the grave, because there is no way to even articulate the hurt, because our whole character, essence of our being is shattered. And to make it through, we must realize that what God says about us is true, that in the final reality, Dr. King was right, truth crushed down to the earth shall rise again. And we are not what others say about us. And it's not even about them, it's how we respond and thrive and come through the trauma. I would imagine that by now I should be glowing like a diamond because the fire and the pressure and the trauma and the hatred and the lying and the dispersions and the impunity of character was all the rough stuff that transformed this piece of coal into a brilliant diamond. And I'm hopeful to be able now to really, through this book, encourage others doing any systemic work, any change work, on how to survive it, but more importantly, of how to recognize it, because it's going to come. So let's just go ahead and I think that's your point. It's going to come.
Mhm.
What's most important is how do we come through it?
And at what cost,
I,
right? Like you mentioned our health. I've had my own health challenges, but um, there are so many Black women around. Every time I turn around, there just seems to be another serious. There's death or disease, the things that are happening to our bodies because of what we have to endure. Now, people will say, yeah, but if only Dr. J had done, blah, 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 blah.
mhm,
I continue to ask the questions. I mean, I'm not trying to
mhm,
regurgitate the whole nightmare,
mhm,
but
mhm,
um, if in fact those issues that were raised about you have merit to them,
mhm,
um, are those standards being held to other people there? Let's just talk about in the state government, right? Because I've looked to go see, okay, if you're firing her for not spending her budget or not, uh, whatever those issues are, there's always, I'm going to talk about that whole performance system here in just a second. But then why is it not being equitably addressed with other people? Because I believe, and I'm just going to say his name, I believe Ross Hunter, who is all over the newspapers about his conduct and behavior. I believe he still has a job there. I'm asking the question why. Um, why are some people protected and others just discarded? That's my first comment. The second is, before I talk about this performance system, I just want to reiterate this is not a black and white issue because a lot of the harm that comes is from our own people and either their interpretation of what they believe is performance problems and or their own personal ambition to get ahead, and so um, they engage in behaviors that otherwise other people get away with. And then from a leadership perspective, I'm always questioning, I've watched the direction that the leader who has to make the decision about your termination. um, I've done so many shows where the default mechanism of white leaders is to go into the safe zone because they don't want to have to get in the middle of conflict, and particularly conflict between potentially two people of color. I mean, I've seen that play itself out several times.
mhm.
And so instead of standing up and addressing systemic racism, it's easier to just sweep you aside and say, you shouldn't have talked about God. You shouldn't have talked about this. You shouldn't have done that. In other words, Dr. J, you weren't a perfect person, but you're expected to be, and other people are not. And so here we are with this whole performance management system that I have continued to refer to as the 911 inside of organizations. As soon as you activate it, it's a process to get rid of people.
Right.
And the investigations that get done are triggered. And those investigations, first off, they're being hired by the employer. So what do you believe the outcome of that investigation is going to be? If that person doing that investigation is earning their living by picking up government contracts to conduct investigations and protect the governor, do we actually think we're going to get an unbiased finding in that?
um, what you know, when you go back to Willie Lynch, The Making of a Slave, I mean, the playbook is it's clear. We were divided against ourselves, and often when Harry Tubman and them were leading the Underground Railroad, it was the black people who were saying to Massa, Tizzy's leaving, Tizzy's trying to run away. Or they were the catchers of those who were enslaved. So the fact that, often black people are used to do that, take down other black people, is nothing new. This is all part of this system, racist system by design. It's a predictable outcome. Now, why are some people protected and some are not protected? The same thing. There are those who maintain the status quo, they'll be protected. And those who were hired to dismantle it, by the way, are not. And when you talk about and truth has no place in this because clearly, well, as of Tuesday, May 16th, we had obligated 2.1 million of the 2.2 million that was still yet to be spent by June 30th. This was May. And I guess, if you take a survey to find out which other agencies had money that was not spent as of May 17th, I'm sure there were others, but typically in organizations, what happens is those entities that are underspent, their monies are swept to cover those agencies are overspent. When you were talking about vacancies, well, I didn't have any vacancies. All of my positions were filled at the time, but I'm sure that other departments had a higher vacancy rate than we. But that's not the issue. Notwithstanding, I had messaged that particular year, after we got the $18 million from the legislature, yay, we were going to pivot to dealing with operations. This wasn't even about any of that. This was about revealing this system because there's another legislator right now in Washington State. There's another investigation against her, myself, but our roles are not to maintain the status quo. We were in place to put public back in public service and service back in public service and do it in a way that centered everyone's humanity, which went against the culture of the organization. So why are some protected and others aren't? It's because they can get away with it because that's the way the system has been designed. But I and others are here to say, and you, that no, those days are over. We will continue to use our voice. You could try to kill us, but it won't work because we are here at the assignment of God. And what people say about it, what did Dad say? He says, people go say, Karen, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Don't be defined by what people say about you. What's most important is what God says about you and what you say about you. And that's why we continue this fight for equity and justice for all, to ensure and to expose, because if nothing else, at least no one in America or in the state can deny that we are in a racist system that protects largely white males. Because we're watching on a national level, if anyone had engaged in any of that behavior other than a white male, those people would already be in prison. I mean, so it's time to rest. It's time to reflect. It's time to regroup. It's time to be at peace. It's time to embrace our brilliance. It's time to show up and do what we're created to do to the best of our ability, be impeccable with our words, to don't make assumptions, right? And don't take anything personally, because quite truthfully, fundamentally, this is, but it isn't really about me. But I'm thankful that God chose me to be the one to walk it out, because I can now use my voice and experience maybe to help others to navigate and thrive when, not if, when it happens to them. And I'm talking about people who look like me.
I want to come back to Dr. J. I appreciate, I said this last year when we talked, uh, And I observed it with the district attorney, Fonnie Willis, last night, how she responded to questions too, which is coming back at, we're strong, we're going to continue to move forward, we rally the troops, we do those things. But I want to come back to, part of the reason why I do these shows is also to highlight the dysfunction of a system that we work in, and that is almost forcing people to behave in a certain way. And I want to show this clip because I have a point to this, but I want you to watch this.
Ms. Willis about her romantic relationship with Mr. Wade.
Yes.
Did Ms. Willis tell you on more than one occasion that she was engaged in a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade prior to you leaving the district attorney's office?
Did she tell me or did I observe?
I'm saying right now what to tell me.
Yes.
Did she tell you that in the year of 2020?
Yes.
In the year of 2021?
Yes.
Are you certain that Ms. Willis told you about the romantic relationship with Mr. Wade prior to November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
Now, did you all?
Have you seen that clip before?
Never. I've
Do
been
you-
resting.
That woman who came forward to testify against Fonnie Willis was her friend.
Oh,
That was her friend. And I bring this up and show this because I think it is vitally important for us as Black women to watch one come out against the other publicly like that, to create harm to her, is a pattern of behavior in the workplace that, if that alone stopped, could completely change a trajectory for outcomes for all people. And that mentality that I have to bite in or tear her in order so I can get ahead. People that you've personally, well, I don't want to point fingers at people. I'll be careful how I say this. I'm making a point about this system that is in place that is incentivizing behavior of other women, particularly to harm other women in the workplace. And then, I've said, there's a phrase that was told to me once early in my career, and the phrase was, the toes you step on today are connected to the ass you have to kiss tomorrow. And said different, that circle always comes full circle. So when you create harm to somebody else, harm's going to come back to you. And I think many people have not learned that lesson yet, or won't omit biting into the tear down of somebody else. So to activate investigations and to say these things, that those are seeds that are planted. I mean, we're watching it now with the whole Diddy, and you do create harm, and for several years, but then God reveals the truth. And I guess my question to you about this whole point is, this ecosystem, this internal performance management system, what are your thoughts, I guess, about how or what we should be doing different to change outcomes so that people can't just hold on to, she violated the respectful workplace policy, so therefore we need to fire her?
prayer changes things. That's number one. But number two, you talked about the woman who came forward against Fonnie Willis was her friend. Now, particularly for people of faith, we already know that you love Jesus, that don't mean nothing. The test is, do you love Judas? Because you see, Judas was on the team, and he's the one who betrayed Christ with a kiss, which resulted in his crucifixion. And until we understand that it's our role, for those of us who profess to love Jesus, to love Judas is on the team, just as we do everyone else, and understand that without them doing their role, they can't get to where they need to go. That woman played a role in Fonnie Willis's life, and she has probably helped propel her to get where she's going, just as those of us who've gone through this from our friends have as well. Now, how do we stop it? This is probably why I probably got in trouble, because there's a principle that's called triangulation. That's when an employee says something to the boss about another employee and hasn't even talked to the person. My thing was, you got a problem with your colleague, go ahead and talk to them first. Y'all can't work it out, then bring it to me. See, when we allow this behavior, we allow people to use their voice, verbal venom is what I call it, to say all manner of thing against someone, and not give that person, provide them the opportunity to say that to the person in front of them. We perpetuate the system. So saying no, go get your colleague and say that to me in front of them. Let's work that out. That was one of the principles in the Office of Equity. And I think once we do that, that'll help. But fundamentally, back to the making of a slave, when Black women were pitted against Black women, darker skin against lighter skin, and men against women, the self and whiteness was established as the standard. The self-hatred that we received and internalized also must be dealt with. Because if we love one another, we can't allow that woman would have never testified against Fonnie, or she would have pled the fifth, or would have said something different. When we love one another, we can then love our sisters also, and not allow ourselves to be used as a tool against them. Until that changes, this continues. And as long as this continues, we must be mindful of what's going on, and always remember that it's hurting people that hurt people. And it's only through the love of Christ and forgiveness, and which were values of our Office of Equity, for equity, anti-racism work: love, dignity, equity, justice, and using our mouth to build up, and then our words to build up as opposed to tear people down.
I appreciate your explanation and thoughts about the Judas and the role that he or she plays for every one of God's people who are chosen and anointed to do something greater. And in wisdom and age, you learn those sort of things, that this is just a stepping stone, if you will.
Right.
Now, it doesn't make it any easier. And if we're thinking about advice to other Black women about, the love of each other, I would even add the love of yourself, because if you love yourself enough and respect yourself enough, you won't do that to somebody else. You will understand, if it happened to you, what that would feel like to you. And
Right.
so I often say, to your point about the triangulation and learning to resolve conflict within each other, I believe, we as a community, we as Black women specifically, if we could do that, if we could resolve conflict between us, and help her, and not to feel, I mean, I think you know me well enough now that I will always ask the questions. What did I do? Or is there something I can do different? Or how did that affect you? Or can we just communicate with each other? And because I feel like when I looked at, not everybody will agree with my assessment, but I looked at that investigative report about you. If I were the HR director in charge, I would not have moved forward with termination, right? Because I understand what creates a lot of that and what's behind that and what the motives are for that. And so, yeah,
Well,
that's a
let me speak to that, by the
yeah.
way. That investigative report had nothing to do with termination. I mean, let's get this straight. May 17th was a conversation. I was paid my salary till August and then had full unemployment benefits until March and then transitioned to my new assignment. And no state organization gives unemployment benefits to employees who are terminated for misconduct. When you look at the date of the investigative report, as a matter of fact, that wasn't even part of the conversation of my last conversation. That was the investigation report wasn't even on the table. That investigation was completed after I left.
Mm.
And now I find out without even my memo for the record indicating that I still to this day don't know the specific allegations lodged against me because I haven't even read that report. However, I did see a couple words that I was looking for it the other day to deal with the elephant in the middle of the room with the new staff. But I did see that there was an allegation of micromanagement. And just for the record, let me just be clear here. I believe if I have to do your job and mine, there's one of us too many, and it's not me. And I believe the best form of management is self-management. The best form of accountability is self-accountability. And everybody who's ever been in my employ, this is not a news flash to them. So I almost had to laugh when I saw that in that report when I was looking for my document to share with the other team. But nevertheless, even though that wasn't there, I was able to just say to the new team, oh, don't get this twisted at all. Let me message my leadership philosophy for you, because if you think it's in that report, you'll be it won't go well with you. And so again, the termination, and that was my choice, by the way, resign or be terminated. Well, I won't go resign from my assignment from God, right? I was given the choice because when God said, because I had to ask him, what you want me to do, Lord? He's like, well, no cross, no crown, and this is your cross. And public resurrection follows public crucifixion, and there is no public crucifixion in resignation. So no, I just want to let's not get this twisted. I was not when you serve at the pleasure of they were pleased. This is that they and I believe them, and this is why Best Buy heard because I was told, Dr. J, we all agree that you are the person to start this work, and we all agree now that we need a different type of leader to sustain the work. I wasn't mad at him. All I was like was just let's just make sure that this is done in a way that's proper and appropriate. So all the pushback that later came up could have been avoided. So no, that investigation report, Cindy Bright, was completed after I left. Oh, after I left, May 26th or whatever.
So
Um,
do you a couple things. One, I just wanted to comment about um, I was chuckling inside listening to you when you just said, you know, there's one of us too many, and
I
it ain't
mean,
me, right. I think a lot of folks can't handle candor, and so I think that because I heard that in Fonnie Willis's as well. I think a lot of us Black women have a very direct style, and so I'm chuckling over that because I'm sure lots of folks can't handle that. But let me come back to a couple things. One is, I guess I'll put an exclamation mark on the benefits that got paid to you so that they did not challenge your unemployment, which means that you weren't charged, you weren't fired for cause, because if you were
no,
fired for cause, you wouldn't have been eligible for those benefits.
right.
So point well taken. But do you think that that investigative report was done to cover themselves in case there was any further action on your part? Do you think that that's why that was done, or what's your thinking?
I have no idea, lost no sleep over any of that because I just wanted to be able to get out of the situation and be allowed to write my book. Because you know when the time is up, and the day before I'd already told staff, just no matter what happens to be, do your best. that this could very well be my last day. I told them this in our Tuesday staff meeting, and if anybody wants to tell the truth, you can ask them. And when the call came to meet with the governor's office the next day, Wednesday, I'm like, here it is. I will be relieved of my duties tomorrow. So just like Jesus knew when he had to go to Calvary, I mean, I knew. This is why I wasn't trying to take the assignment in the first place. So why they did the investigation report, I have no idea. All I know is it really provided me an opportunity to determine, am I walking the talk of faith that I profess? Am I going to let that get in me and make me bitter, or am I going to go through the process of being healed and laid out and humbled and be better? And I chose the latter. I have no idea, don't want to know. All I do know is that I received some message accusing me of telling someone, reporter, whatever, who requested a public records request. But then the response is there is no investigation, it's not finished. I mean, that would normally have been a response. So I can't attribute why they did what they did. All I know is that it helped me to message myself with my new staff and team. And what it also did is it served as a shield for me during this year of recovery when I couldn't even get out of the bed, just turn from the left to the right. Even my neighbors were concerned. They would feed me. They would take care of me. It was pretty horrendous. All I know is it kept everybody out of my life who believed it to be true, and I needed the space. And only those who had the courage to ask me about it did I even have give any of my time. So it was a great filter for those who operate that way. I have no use for you, so don't even come near me. Thank you, God, for keeping me from them, and only allowed to get through into my space those who really were concerned about me. And it was just what I needed to go through that horrendous time of just being like in a pit. But we know Joseph was in a pit, and a pit can't stop a promise of God. And that's what I'm walking and living in now.
Let me come back to something you just said. And I'm going to show a clip of something before I make the comment about it and ask you about it. So let's have a look at this clip.
Not be canceled. Andrew Schultz cannot be canceled. I would think Shane Gillis right now, can't be canceled. Kevin can. Kevin's very corporate.
Right.
Kevin has to be careful what he says.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. Like someone like Ken Chappelle, they don't have these corporate deals. Kevin's got to be careful. And I'm sure there's some things he wants to say.
Right.
But he ain't trying to mess up that check.
I don't
Just like you. You don't defend black women. You know what I mean? There's a lot. I'm sure like Wrangler's about to call you. John Deere.
How funny is that you don't protect black women, and it's comical to millions of people, and that are watching these podcasts. What you said right before I showed that clip was there were times that you couldn't get out of bed and your neighbors were checking on you. I was checking on you. Many of us were trying to make sure you were okay, because we recognize that you're a human, and that human beings can't just be kicked to the curb, no matter how professional and how divine we can reflect on and know its purpose. It still hurts, and it still takes its toll on people.
Right.
And so what would you say to people who go through this pit before the promise comes? What would you say to people how to get their head off the pillow and keep going?
First of all, I would say, put your head on the pillow. And I think I'm going to have to answer this way. At this point, I was sleeping on the floor. One of my first things that God asked me to do when I came home in May last year was to give away all my stuff. So I did. He said because I was going to be moving. So I took the mattress, put it on the floor, and slept on a pallet on the floor. Because it reminded me of a time when I was comfortable during missionary work and I was under my weighted blanket. And I would say, give yourself time to hurt and to cry and to just let go and let others love on you. And as the tapes are replaying of what was said, what they did, go through that. Go through it. Don't ignore it because it's going to manifest some other way. Go through it. And this is important because I'm now in my new assignment. I actually have a bed. Yay. Thank you, Caitlin, for helping me get a bed. But I found myself sleeping on the floor the day before I started my new assignment. And God said, now, is this because you can't get up? Or is it because this is a place that reminds you of being in the womb? Because I don't know if you've ever slept under a weighted blanket. I would also encourage you to get a weighted blanket, at least 20 pounds, when you go through this, because it like pulls all of the trauma and the hurt out. And you feel like you're safe, like you're in a cocoon. For me, it was like being in a womb, in my mother's womb. And so I went to that place of safety on Tuesday night before starting my new assignment last week. And finally even had to admit, you know, Lord, you've done a great work in me. I'm at peace. I know this is of you, but I don't feel safe. So I went back to the floor, went back to the blanket. As a matter of fact, I had to throw the weighted blanket away as an indication that, Lord, I trust you. No matter what happens, if this all plays out again, if I'm lied on again, if I'm unemployed again, I trust you and will continue the ministry that you've called me to do here on earth. So lean into the pain and be honest about it. If somebody calls, how you doing? Say, I'm not. Don't even answer the phone. I would suggest that. If you can't even talk, don't even answer the phone. Turn the phone off and just go into that place to be healed, that place of darkness, that dark night of the soul. And come through. When you come through, you'll be like that butterfly. And all of that can be released from within you so that that can flow through you as love.
That is an incredibly spiritually mature perspective about the journey. As you described, sleeping on the floor. Whew, that just kind of got to me too, because I don't know the reasons for you giving away furniture. I myself lost a lot of material things in my life when someone took me down, when someone, the stroke of a pen of someone who doesn't like you because you're telling the truth or you're revealing something that makes people uncomfortable to contend with. The Again, the behavior, the reaction is to tear. And so my heart hurts for having to rebuild your life and start another assignment and do the work of the Father. Not many of us are built for that because it requires a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of sweat and a lot of soul searching.
Yeah.
I guess my final kind of question for you, and you've kind of touched on it somewhat, but I just wanted to know, like, for you inside, like, what has changed for you post all of this? What's changed?
I've changed. Nothing bothers me anymore. I'm at peace. I enjoy each and every day. I'm no longer concerned about what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. I'm here for a reason. You know, I'm a Black woman. I'm beautiful. I'm intelligent. I'm creative. I'm powerful. I know who I am. I know who my God is. And I'm here for a purpose. And I'm okay with that. What's changed is I no longer am focused on doing anything. I don't care about doing anything. I'm just enjoying and being. Living in my 55 plus community, I'm having the time of my life being surrounded with others who we do what we want to do, whenever we want to do it, if we want to do it, and it's enjoying each and every moment. Grandma Alice put it like this. She said, don't give me my flowers when I'm dead. Give me my flowers when I'm living so I can enjoy them. And so to memorialize this moment in my life, I bought myself a dozen of beautiful roses with baby's breath, to give myself my roses and flowers and enjoy life each and every day, not giving any concern about the outcome, but understanding that what we do right now starts shifting the trajectory of all outcomes. Yeah. Because I'm still convinced that it is Black women who will need to be able to rebuild society based on truth and love and integrity, right? And humanity. And because clearly we're the ones who have been designated to bear the brunt. And so clearly we're the only ones equipped to even do it. If, by the way, we choose to. And I would submit for the next few years, we just kick back and relax and let everybody who knows better than we just go ahead and handle their business and see how that works for them. And then show up when and if we feel called to go up and restate what we've been saying for the last 400 years. If we feel like it and are called to do it.
Dr. Karen Johnson, you continue to be an inspiration. You continue to speak power and love into the world, and those seeds that you are sowing into the world will truly come to harvest. I believe that. And so I really appreciate that you came back on a year later to talk with us about how you are. We wish you nothing but the best. And if it's okay, I'm going to continue to check in with you and see how life is going for you. We love you, and I know the community will be very happy to see that you're doing well. So thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you, Queen.
Half that up in sacks, I favor Black businesses. Sue me, I'm rooting for everybody.